It was our 7th anniversary, marked by my husband's gift of 999 roses. Right after dragging myself out of the recovery room, I dialed his number and told him in a flat tone that I wanted a divorce. On the other end, his young girlfriend sobbed, "Madam, it's all my fault. Please don't be mad at Mr. Bai." Joshua spent a moment soothing her before turning his attention to me, his voice icy. "Fine, have it your way." It was 2 weeks before I saw him again. "Make me some noodles." Joshua came home early in the morning, but unlike usual, there was no warm meal on the dining table. He instinctively frowned, barked a couple of orders at me, and then headed for the bathroom. When he emerged, steam still trailing from him, I remained absently glued to the TV screen. He produced several designer bags from his suitcase. "Here. See anything you like?" That pink bag looked like something young women would love. Back when he used to woo me, he'd carefully consider my tastes. Now he just uses generic gifts to placate me. I couldn't even bring myself to look. Grabbing the remote, I flipped the channel and asked bluntly, "So when do you have time to get a divorce?" Joshua was always too busy. Even our anniversary gift was picked by his personal assistant. When it came to his work, I had to work around his schedule. "Enough. Fiona didn't know you dislike roses. I'll remind her next time." Joshua poured himself a small glass of red wine and sat across from me in the single sofa, a faint, almost placating smile on his lips. Fiona had been Joshua's friend from childhood and had feelings for him since those early days. Right after graduation, she landed the role of his personal secretary. They remained so close that even on business trips, they stayed in the same suite. Actually, I never held it against Fiona for pursuing Joshua. After all, it takes two to cheat. If he hadn't wanted it, he'd have rejected her. I forced a yawn, and tears sprang to my eyes unbidden. When I stayed quiet, Joshua figured it was settled. He asked how our 7-year-old placed on his last exam. I shook my head. "I don't know. I didn't keep it from you out of spite." Honestly, I didn't know either. The Bai family placed great emphasis on elite education. The Bai children were brought up in the ancestral home from a young age, constantly enrolled in various courses. It was absurd. This child was mine, yet I barely saw him. I fought desperately, but the Bai family remained unmoved. They saw my marriage into their household as a blessing beyond measure for my family. Anything more was out of the question. Joshua pinched the bridge of his nose, urging me to pay more attention to our son. "If this keeps up, Fiona will be more of a mother to him than you are." I got it. Yesterday had been my only visitation day to pick up our son from school. I arrived an hour early only to wait until dark as the school was closing. That's when Fiona called, saying Mrs. Bai had asked her to take him out for dinner. Through the phone, Joshua's voice suddenly came through, asking Fiona if she wanted some soup. The truth suddenly hit me. I managed a bitter smile. "Isn't this exactly what you wanted? I'll leave right now and get out of her way." I wasn't sure what exactly had struck a nerve, but he went silent for a moment before snapping, "Enough, Elena. I won't tolerate this any longer." He abruptly stood and strode toward me. Calmly, I added, "Come to think of it, I forgot to tell you I had a miscarriage. A month ago." That night, he got a call from Fiona and dashed out to help her with a drunken emergency. The pain was excruciating. I nearly blacked out as I drove myself to the emergency room. The doctor told me I was over 2 months pregnant, but the baby had no heartbeat. It had already been absorbed. Upon learning the baby was gone, even I was surprised by the relief I felt. Alone in the hospital bed, I realized it was time to end this marriage. In the living room, Joshua stood with his back to me, gripping his wine glass so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He never asked why I hadn't contacted him. He knew damn well how many times I called that night. Unfortunately, he never picked up all night. "So what? You were never fit to be a mother anyway," he said. Joshua walked into the study and shut the door firmly behind him. 7 years of marriage, countless arguments. I was always the one to cave first. But this time, the familiar knock of me pleading for reconciliation never came. After half an hour, he opened the door and scoured the house, but found no sign of me. Joshua's first love was me. Who would have bet the well-mannered heir to a fortune would fall for a wild child who smoked, partied, and never cared about school? Our first meeting was far from pleasant. In a grimy back alley, some local thugs had cornered this bookish guy. As I was passing by, one of them catcalled me. So I charged my bike into the crowd, taught those thugs a lesson, and unwittingly rescued the boy. From that day on, Joshua stuck to me like glue. He followed me home after school every day, no matter how hard I tried to lose him. He gave me roses. I tossed them in the toilet to soak, then flung the soggy mess back on his desk. He prepared this fancy lunch for me, but I just shoved it at some beggar right there on the street. My friends teased me, saying I had a rich sucker hopelessly devoted to me. It was obvious we were from different planets. But it was this man who, when my drunken father beat me so severely that I couldn't go to school, broke into the house, scooped me up, and rushed me to the hospital. As the doctor sewed up my wounds, he stood facing away, shoulders shaking violently, face buried in his hands. The doctor, helpless and amused, asked why he was crying since he wasn't the one hurt. Joshua choked out, "I don't know why, but my chest hurts so bad." He even foolishly asked the doctor if he should get an EKG. In the hospital room, Joshua peeled an apple with awkward care. "Elena, I can't bear this pain anymore. Please don't get hurt." I took a bite of the ice cream cone he'd bought me, murmured okay, then glared at him and demanded, "Will you be my boyfriend?" We were both flushed and tongue-tied all day. I confided in Joshua about something deeply personal. Whenever my dad got drunk and beat her half to death, he'd leave a wilted rose at home as his apology. So if he ever wanted to end things, all he had to do was give me a rose. Just give me a rose. "Don't be silly, we'll never be apart," Joshua cut me off, pulling me into a tight hug at 18. To escape my father's control, Joshua helped me leave the country with him to study. His father tried to split us up by cutting off all financial support. We juggled 2 part-time jobs while going to school. Despite how insanely busy and tough those days were, Joshua and I always found time to tease each other even while brushing our teeth. In our tiny apartment, we'd laugh and bicker, utterly lost in each other. How wonderful it would have been if we could have lived like that forever. "Miss Lynn, are you all right?" The doctor's voice brought me back. It had been 3 days since I moved out of the villa, and my insomnia had worsened. I was holding the prescription the doctor had given me when I ran into Fiona while picking up my medication. "Ma'am, what are you doing here all by yourself?" Fiona blinked innocently, and when I didn't respond, she gazed at me with pity. "Joshua told me about your baby." "I'm so sorry. Please don't be too upset. You're still young, you can try again soon." "Don't worry, I won't be having another." As soon as I finished speaking, Joshua stormed over, scowling. I noticed him clutching a spray can, but couldn't understand what had him so worked up. Fiona said in a sweet, pained voice that she'd hurt her ankle coming down the stairs, adding it was just a little sprain that didn't need a doctor. But Joshua insisted she come to the hospital, so she ended up late for work. When Joshua noticed the medication bag I was holding, he couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" When I ignored him and started to walk away, he snatched the medication from me. "Elena, when did the insomnia begin? Look at me. How long are you going to keep this silent treatment?" Joshua assumed I'd stormed off just to make him notice me. So until now, he hadn't bothered to find out where I'd been staying or what I'd been doing all this time. Without realizing it, he raised his voice, drawing stares from everyone around us. Annoyance flickered in my eyes. After taking back my medication, I said quietly, "I'm not making a scene." Maybe I sounded too quiet, so Joshua thought I was weak. He suggested driving me home first and then taking Fiona back to her office. But I shook my head. Work should be your priority. I can get home myself. When I said home, I meant my own place. My father, who struggled with alcoholism, died in a car crash, leaving me with a substantial settlement. The house I once couldn't wait to flee was now my only refuge. As I walked away, I spotted Joshua just as he started toward me, only for Fiona to seize his arm. Her face pale, she said she felt unwell, as if she was having a hypoglycemic episode. Joshua hesitated for a moment before turning away toward a nearby vending machine. The very day my lawyer drafted the divorce agreement, Joshua called. He gasped, "Mario's sick. Get to the family home before 5. He hung up before I could get a word out. Relief washed over me as the printer hummed to life, spitting out the divorce papers. When I arrived at the By family's old house, I discovered the whole family had gathered. The family was gathered for dinner, with my son seated between Joshua and Fiona. To an outsider, they appeared as a genuine family of 3. Eyes red, I approached my son after so long and gently touched his cheek, concern in my voice as I asked what was wrong. The boy was the spitting image of Joshua. He batted my hand away irritably, glaring at me before darting his eyes toward Fiona. A sharp pang stabbed my heart. Fiona drew my son close and said sweetly, "Mario isn't sick, Elena. Did you take too many pills? Are you confused?" The moment Fiona finished speaking, the By family turned on me with scorn. I could tell they were secretly mocking me, particularly Joshua's sister Amanda at that moment. She had always thought I wasn't good enough for her brother. She'd given me a hard time before, but because of Joshua, I put up with it. But this time I wasn't going to take it anymore. I turned to Joshua and demanded, "You told me Mario was sick and to get here fast. I raced across town only to find your mistress calling me delusional. So who's lying? Who's actually sick?" To my shock, the force in my voice sent panic flashing across Fiona's face. She opened her mouth as if to quickly say something, but I didn't let her speak. I looked down at her and warned, "Fiona, if being a mistress is what you want, so be it. But don't you dare use my son to get attention. Otherwise, don't say I didn't warn you." My sharp words turned Fiona's eyes red with humiliation. Joshua slammed his chopsticks down and glared at me coldly. "Elena, this is pure jealousy. Our son caught a cold days ago. Have you even checked on him, as his mother? You were supposed to be here at 5, yet you kept everyone waiting. Since you clearly can't tell time, go join the servants for dinner in the back room." Not a soul under this roof dared oppose him. A glint of dark triumph flashed in Fiona's eyes as she bit her lip and gave me a sympathetic look. Amanda raised an eyebrow, disdain clear in her eyes. With everyone watching, I walked over to the housekeeper, Susanna. "Susanna, if you're free sometime, come by my place. I'll cook you something." Locking eyes with Joshua, I flashed him a mocking smile. "You disgust me. Going somewhere? I didn't say you could leave, huh?" His unbelievable nerve. "Get your hands off me now." After catching Fiona's glare, Amanda promptly sneered, "After all these years, Elena, you're still the same always trailer trash who'll never be a princess." To my surprise, Joshua snapped at Amanda, "Shut your mouth." Seizing his moment of distraction, I wrenched my hand free. The sharp pain in my wrist flared my long-suppressed anger. My eyes swept the room coldly, fixing on Amanda's smug, revolting face. "I'll show you what real bad manners look like." Slowly approaching Amanda, I picked up the bowl of her favorite creamy soup and dumped it right over her perfectly styled hair. While not entirely surprising, no one had anticipated this. In the By household, the usually meek young wife had dared to do something so bold. For a few seconds, the old house held its breath in a breathless silence, then Amanda snapped, unleashing a shrill scream. The others snapped out of their daze, clamoring around Amanda to check on her. What began as a lavish family dinner had turned into a madhouse. And inside, I was beaming. This was the real taste of life, noisy and vibrant. But when all that noise is directed at you, it brings a sense of helplessness. After all, it was hopeless trying to outshout so many with just my one voice. The only thing I could do was single out the angriest person in the room. Just as Amanda was about to slap me, I snatched her hair and jammed a whole loaf of bread into her mouth. Finally, Amanda fell silent. I smiled at Joshua and said, "That's how you make someone shut up." Seeing the dark looks from the Bai family, especially the matriarch slamming her fist on the table and shaking with rage while shouting curses, I realized they still had no clue what true rudeness meant. With a sigh, I walked over to the table corner, grabbed the white tablecloth, and ripped it off. Plates shattered with a crystalline crash, food splattering everywhere. The flying globs spattered the immaculate outfits of the Bai family members, decorating them like grotesque ornaments. Nobody dares defy a madwoman. Maybe it was because my actions were so crazy, but my eyes were icy clear. For a moment, no one dared speak, let alone approach me. My gaze met Joshua's, and I spread my arms with a relaxed expression. Ever since marrying into your Bai family, I've wanted to do this. 7 years passed, and I thought I could endure it. But now, I have nothing left to fear. The old lady gripped her chest, her voice trembling as she demanded Joshua divorce her immediately. Before I could sarcastically remark on her help, Joshua announced to everyone that I'd been off my rocker lately and they shouldn't take me seriously. "Elena, clean up this mess. This is your final chance." At this, Fiona and everyone in the Bai family stared at him in stunned disbelief. Even I couldn't help wondering if I should take his temperature. Had he lost his mind? Insane? After calling Joshua insane, I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and flung them at his feet in front of everyone. "Mario, I'll drop by when I feel like it." With that, I strode out of Bai Manor gates without looking back. The engine revved as I pulled away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Joshua racing after the car, bloodied hands and all, with Fiona trying to catch up to him. His hands were smeared with blood, but he didn't seem to notice as he frantically pounded on the car window. "Elena," he yelled, desperate to make me stop. Fiona sobbed, "Joshua, tend to your wound first." He paid no attention, his gaze locked on me. "Elena, get out." I flashed him a cold smile, hit the accelerator, and sped off without a backward glance. That night, my phone rang relentlessly, an endless tide of interruptions. Even silenced, the screen kept lighting up until I couldn't take it anymore and yanked out the SIM card. Unable to reach me by phone, Joshua flooded my WeChat with messages. He questioned my divorce decision, asking if it was all because of those 999 roses. He apologized but admitted he was confused why I couldn't move on. He brought up our 7 years together, pleading with me not to throw it all away over something so trivial. When he mentioned our son, his tone grew even more sincere, begging me not to break up the family. After a moment's thought, I shot back with just one sentence: "You need to calm down." This was the very phrase he always used to calm me down, and I knew how effective it was. True to my expectations, he went quiet at once. As if he had vanished, I had no further contact with him throughout the following week. I'd noticed him quietly driving around our old neighborhood. At that moment, I was on the roof watering the plants when I casually spotted his familiar license plate. I stretched lazily, then turned and went back inside without a second thought. Though the divorce wasn't final yet, my new life had already begun. I found a temporary job at a convenience store near the park, and slowly started to reconnect with the outside world. Having been a stay-at-home wife for so long, I'd almost forgotten how to make casual conversation. Fortunately, most customers were understanding and patient. One of them was a young college student who came to the park every day to walk his golden retriever. He'd often ask me to watch his dog while it was tied up outside the store. Over time, we got to know each other, and I discovered he was actually a neighbor in my building. Sometimes we'd bump into each other downstairs, and he'd ask me to join him for a walk with his dog. As we strolled, we'd chat, savoring those rare leisurely moments. Occasionally, he'd bring homemade food to share, deepening our bond. We became close friends, integral parts of each other's lives. That weekend evening, I finally received a WeChat message from Joshua summoning me to his office to finalize the divorce agreement. He'd never liked me visiting his workplace before, probably worried I might seem too plain for his corporate environment and embarrass him in front of colleagues. When I got the message, I'd just finished my shift at the convenience store. After a quick freshening up, I headed to his office. When I arrived, he was tied up on a call. He glanced over, then signaled for me to take a seat. Seeing that Fiona wasn't there, I decided to forego the coffee and instead immersed myself in a mobile game. After finishing a round, I realized Joshua had been standing behind me, quietly watching. Sign. He pulled his gaze away and placed the divorce agreement on the coffee table. I didn't sign right away as he expected, but carefully went over every clause of the agreement. His generosity surprised me, but I wasn't naive. I suggested transferring the overseas property we bought 2 years ago to me in exchange for giving up my original company shares. Joshua hesitated briefly, then called his lawyer to amend the agreement. However, just as I was about to sign, he suddenly placed his hand over the signature line. His face darkened as he warned me, "Take a good look. I'll have custody of our son once you sign this, you'll never see him again." Of course I understood. I knew the law granted me the right to visit, but if the BIS objected, I'd likely never see my son again. Indescribable grief filled my heart, yet even so, my resolve to divorce remained unshakable. With Joshua, the child would undoubtedly live a life of material comfort. He's got a great environment growing up here that's a real head start in life. Joshua clearly hadn't anticipated my reaction. With an impatient scoff, he shooed me away. "I've got better things to do. We're done talking." Then he ripped up the divorce papers right in front of me. I paused for a moment before curling my lips into a cold smile. "Fine. I'll file for divorce. I'm done with you." "Stop, just stop." Joshua's voice choked with panic as he caught up. He trailed after me all the way to the elevator, ignoring his subordinates' curious stares. Suddenly, he demanded, "Do you have another man? You put on lipstick to see him, didn't you?" I said nothing. He pressed, "If not, why would you be so cruel as to reject your own son?" Just then, the elevator doors slid open to reveal Fiona. She was supposed to be off duty today, but apparently a colleague had tipped her off. Being status conscious, she softly urged Joshua to let me leave, to spare everyone embarrassment. However, Joshua waved her off irritably and snapped, "This is between my wife and me. It's none of your damn business." Fiona's face paled instantly as she scanned the room. She caught colleagues who already had their suspicions about her and Joshua whispering among themselves. She couldn't fathom how much gossip this incident would spark around the office. Fiona fled to the stairs, tears welling in her eyes. I looked at Joshua with a cold smile. "Shouldn't you be chasing after her?" Actually, I never really blamed Fiona much. The one who betrayed us was Joshua all along. I got back in touch with some old friends, Helen and Lisa. We used to call ourselves the Homemaker Cat's Eye Trio back in the day. Back in our youth, we'd run away from our families and stuck together through some really dark times. But they always knew where I lived and had my number. Yet as we matured, we developed this unspoken understanding not to intrude on each other's lives. I poured my heart out to them about how rotten Joshua had been. As the alcohol kicked in, they grew so furious they nearly offered to burn down the By family's old house then and there. We laughed through our tears, clutching our sides in catharsis for all the pent-up grievances. As time passed, my insomnia slowly lifted. But the peace didn't last long. Within a month, Joshua stormed back into my life. He showed up unannounced at my door and camped out from 3 in the afternoon until 1 in the morning, making such a scene that the neighbors nearly called the police. Reluctantly, I had to allow him inside. Since I left, Joshua had visibly lost weight, and the confident, composed light that once shone in his eyes had faded. Susanna told me that after I moved out, Joshua frequently went back to the old house. Initially, Joshua's mother was thrilled, preparing lavish meals daily for her son and grandson. She even invited Fiona to stay over, hoping to rekindle their romance. But things didn't turn out as she had hoped. Joshua grew more and more picky about his food, eating less and less. To make matters worse, his temper became increasingly unpredictable, and he'd often fly into a rage over the smallest things. One afternoon, he tore apart the storage room hunting for some old high school keepsake, then turned around and screamed at the maid when it didn't surface. A few days ago, he'd even physically ejected Fiona from their bedroom in front of everyone. The two got into a fierce argument, and Fiona, in a fit of rage, tumbled down the stairs, breaking her ankle. Joshua's mother, furious that he blamed her for ruining his marriage, suffered a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital that same night, along with Fiona. They were still laid up in the hospital. As for Joshua, seeing him so haggard and exhausted, I guessed he must not have slept properly in ages. It brought back the same pain I felt when I lost my child. Joshua said sorry, admitting he finally saw why I needed to leave. He brought up all the silent sacrifices I'd made over our 7-year marriage. I've realized you've completely lost faith in me. I gently shook my head. Disappointment was 2 years ago. My decision to divorce came after careful thought. Disappointment isn't the worst part. What truly terrifies me is the numb despair in your heart and the relief that follows. Looking into his eyes, I said calmly, Joshua, I'm already moving on with my life. You need to pull yourself together and start your own journey too. He glanced around and laughed bitterly. Do you remember when I came and took you away? Even now, I still dream about you as you were. He admitted he'd neglected me but insisted he'd never betrayed me. I've always loved only you, Elena. I countered, so what do you even consider cheating? You were right beside me, but a call from her could drag you away anytime. You lapped up her attention while expecting me to have meals ready on demand. That's not love, it's just unfair to me. I fixed my gaze on Joshua, speaking firmly. A flicker of regret crossed Joshua's eyes as they reddened slightly. I know I was wrong, Elena. Please, give me another chance. I can't just throw away our vows like that. He brought up the promises we made during his father's wake. You promised you'd always be with me, that we'd be together through life and death. Have you forgotten that? Those promises, we all meant every word back then. But hearts change, and when his changed first, I had no choice but to adapt. Suddenly, the doorbell chimed. I opened the door to find my young male neighbor standing outside. Spotting Joshua inside, he asked, Do you need any help? Joshua snapped and swung at my neighbor, jumping to conclusions about us. They came to blows instantly. I tried to stop them but failed, so I said coldly, Go ahead and fight if you want. But don't expect me to clean up your mess. And with that, I slammed the door. I couldn't care less about the fight's outcome. All I knew was he was gone from my life after that day. About 2 months later, after Mrs. By had been discharged and was recovering, she unexpectedly told me that my son missed me and asked if I could visit him. I threw on my biker jacket and hopped on my brand new Harley. That day, no mom at the school gate stood out like I did. Children are actually thrilled by the simplest things. All it takes is something fun and exciting to experience. So I took my son for the fast food he'd always craved but the bis had forbidden. So I took my son to finally try McDonald's, that long forbidden treat he'd always dreamed of. After our meal, my son excitedly asked if I could see him again next week. I smiled as I buckled his helmet, before driving him back to the old house. I was about to leave when Mrs. By and Susanna asked me to stay. Their eyes held mixed feelings as they invited me inside. Just then, my son tugged at my hand, begging, Mom, come play upstairs with me? Curious to see the room again after so long, I followed him upstairs. There, at the doorway to the 3rd floor study, I saw Joshua attending a video conference. I stood frozen until my son gave my sleeve a gentle tug, breaking the spell. I followed him into the room. Although my thoughts were elsewhere, I still made an effort to spend time with my son, playing as best I could. Glancing at the time, I said, I need to head home now, sweetie. If I'm free next week, I'll come see you again. He blinked his bright eyes and asked earnestly, Mom, can I go home with you? Can we bring Daddy too? I wasn't sure if By's family had put him up to this, but the yearning in his voice was unmistakable. Of course, sweetheart, maybe someday. But just you and me for now, okay? I didn't want to give him false hope or set him up for disappointment. As I stepped out, Joshua was lingering by the doorframe. Would you like something to eat? Though I wasn't hungry, I caught the worry in his gaze and couldn't bring myself to say no. Just a little. Oh, you're cooking? I can whip up something simple for you. We headed to the old house's ground floor kitchen dining area, hollow and quiet. Joshua asked what I wanted to eat, and I said offhand, anything's fine. He pulled out a spotless white ceramic pot and began preparing rice for porridge. Truth be told, Joshua was a far better cook than me. I remembered our time abroad. Whenever I craved Chinese food, he'd make a special trip to the Asian market after work just to grab discounted groceries. We didn't make porridge often, but whenever I was feeling unwell, he'd always cook me a bowl. I didn't want to distract him as he focused on the porridge. Without any small talk, he quietly minded the pot. For a moment, it felt like we'd slipped back into the past, as if nothing had changed. But this time, the porridge took forever to cook. Whether the heat was too high or it just simmered too long, the smell of burning rice eventually wafted through the kitchen. Joshua didn't seem to notice the burnt scent, and when he thought the porridge was ready, he took the pot off the stove, leaving the heat on, and brought it straight to me, ladling a generous portion into my bowl. Though I clearly smelled the burnt odor, I didn't say anything and quietly ate what was possibly the last bowl I'd ever have from him. How is it? Joshua asked eagerly, watching me. I nodded slightly, but he wasn't satisfied. Silently, he took a spoonful straight from my bowl. This is too bitter. He furrowed his brow in surprise. The porridge was scorched at the bottom and tasted bitter, almost inedible. What happened? He muttered, bewildered. I know I put sugar in. His eyes filled with regret as he looked at me. This porridge tastes terrible. Don't eat it, I'll make you a fresh bowl. He reached for my bowl, having forgotten the porridge was still scalding hot. A searing pain shot through his hand as he instinctively jerked back, sending porridge splashing across the table. I frowned. Joshua, just leave it. I'm full. But he didn't seem to hear me. Ignoring me, he tried to clean up the mess, and I watched his hand turn red and swollen, the skin blistering from the burns. I said coldly, stop faking it. I won't even feel bad for you. I wasn't lying. Seeing his hair now mostly silvered, I felt an unsettling relief. All of this was Joshua's own making. He stared at me blankly, his eyes clouded with bewilderment. He couldn't fathom how someone could turn so cold once they stopped loving. After I left, Joshua stayed there all night, sitting alone, searching for answers. Not long after, he fell ill with acute pneumonia that left him gaunt, reduced to skin and bones. After recovering and being discharged, he developed insomnia, tossing through the night until he resorted to medication to grab brief moments of peace. B's old lady, for Joshua's sake, even begged me to visit him more often. But I ignored her, completely indifferent to her plea. B's family called me cold-hearted, even telling my son not to see me his supposed mother. But they'd forgotten children aren't mindless dolls, they possess their own judgment and emotions. In most cases, Joshua just turned a blind eye to those rare times when I took our son and let me give him the happiness he deserved. A month passed, then 3 months, and half a year later. As time crept by, Joshua finally came to terms with the fact that our relationship couldn't be salvaged. Yet even faced with that truth, he retreated into himself. He retreated into his own spiritual world, while I remained in my small apartment abroad waiting for him. Every time he took his medicine and drifted into dreams, we'd relive the happiness we once shared. Finally, I resorted to legal means to file for divorce. My first petition was rejected, but the second time after we'd been separated so long that our feelings had drifted apart, the court approved it. This ruling officially declared me a financially independent, single woman. I didn't jump into buying a new place. Instead, I gave my old house a full makeover to make it cozier and more livable. During that time, a college guy with a dog showed interest in me. When I politely turned him down, he was respectful about it and didn't press further. Haven't given up on love, actually. I'm still open to meeting men with good character. But I won't allow love to consume my entire life anymore. My own happiness and inner peace became my priority. I realized that only when I truly nurtured myself could I form genuine connections with others. At the airport's bustling waiting hall, I was with two sisters, close friends. We wielded our selfie sticks, flicking through poses and angles to capture countless perfect shots in a single burst. Though we playfully teased each other about our photo-taking skills, we instinctively opened our editing apps and started picking out the best shots. Just as we were lost in giggles, a charming gentleman passed by, catching our attention. All at once we straightened up, our laughter fading. However, we managed to keep our composure for a whole minute before breaking into giggles again. "Anyone hungry?" "I think they're giving out free instant noodles by the gate," one of my friends broke the brief silence. We gave each other knowing looks and, without a word, started playing rock paper scissors to see who'd go grab the noodles. As the game went on, we were bubbling with laughter again, our joyful reflections dancing across the tinted glass. Looking up, I saw a plane ascending into the blue sky, an emblem of freedom and dreams journeying toward the horizon.